A very warm welcome to our esteemed guests, faculty members, students, and distinguished legal professionals. BITS Law School, in collaboration with Surana and Surana International Attorneys, is honored to host the inaugural Fali Nariman Memorial Lecture and Award, a tribute to the remarkable legacy of Fali S. Nariman. This event celebrates Mr. Nariman's unparalleled contributions to law, judicial independence, and constitutional governance in India. Through this initiative, we aim to inspire future generations of legal professionals to uphold the highest standards of integrity, ethical advocacy, and commitment to the rule of law. To formally open the event, I now invite Dr. Ashish Bhardwaj, Dean of BITS Law School, to deliver his welcome address.
Very good morning. Thank you everyone for coming. First of all, on behalf of the Chancellor, Kumar Mangalam Birla, I welcome all of you to BITS Pilani's youngest campus in Mumbai, Greater Mumbai, in Kalyan, which is also home to BITS Law School. Thank you very much. I acknowledge the presence of Honorable Justice Roshan Salvi. We'll be joined by Justice UU Lalit very soon in a virtual mode. Mr. Arvind Datar, of course, Dr. Vinod Surana, his wife, Rashmi Surana, Mr. Billimoria is going to join us very soon, Professor Aparna Chandra, who will join in a virtual mode, all the visiting guests who are on campus today, students, faculty, our tutors, thank you very much. Mr. Fali Nariman, whose legacy we celebrate today, was an indomitable litigator, as we all know, a champion of judicial independence, a celebrated jurist, a skillful orator, a perceptive parliamentarian, a loving husband and an inspiring father, and a humane member of the bar. His values align remarkably with the vision of this very young law school, which is to become an inspirational benchmark in new age legal education through creativity and empathy. Well, several speakers today, much more accomplished and enlightened than me, are going to talk about the great Fali Nariman, his life, his work, his legacy. In my brief address, I would like to share one or two anecdotes, especially for the students sitting here. As you know, we have two cohorts of law students now. The senior most students are in their 4th semester of the 5-year LLB program. So what I'm about to say and what some of the guest speakers are going to say is actually a direct conversation with you. In an interview last year, Fali Nariman was asked why he chose law as a discipline when he was a student. He responded, and I quote, "Law was the last option. My father wanted me to take the civil service exam, but I knew very well that he could not afford it. I had secured a 2nd class in my BA degree, and there was no other choice left other than law. I had no sense of science or mathematics." End quote. So students, if law was your second choice, for whatever reason, you can aspire to reach where Fali Nariman eventually reached. If it is your first choice, which I would really like to believe, then you may go well beyond what he managed to achieve. I also want to mention that Dr. Lalit Bhasin, who was supposed to be part of this event today, could not join us due to an illness. He's recovering well, but he has shared a note, which I'd like to read for all of you here. For the students sitting here, Dr. Lalit Bhasin is a highly respected voice in the legal fraternity. He founded the Society of Indian Law Firms, and he currently leads that society as the president. Let me read his note, and I quote, "Fali Nariman was a colossus, not just in law, but also as a great citizen of this country, and above all, one of the finest human beings. Fali has always been a hero of mine, and that is true for many Indians. He strode across the field of law with brilliance, knowledge, commitment, and dedication to constitutional values and the rule of law. He was totally and exceptionally a crusader for the rule of law and democratic values. This is truly reflected in the following quote of dear Fali. Always remember that when people tell you that there is no rule of law in this country and everything has gone to rack and ruin, you must say that there is hope as long as you and I have freedom under the law. Freedom was close to Fali's heart. And whenever it was in peril, he did not shirk from taking steps to show his abhorrence against state actions to curtail freedom in any manner. Taking a grave risk, he resigned as Additional Solicitor General when the emergency was declared in India about 50 years ago in 1975. He brought laurels to the legal profession by holding various positions of eminence internationally, including in the International Court of Justice, ICJ, the judicial body of the United Nations, and the International Criminal Court. He held the position of President of the Bar Association of India for 2 decades. He was a towering figure in Indian independence, in Indian jurisprudence. His contribution was immense in legal education, and he gave illuminating lectures showcasing the vast breadth of his legal acumen and depth of his constitutional expertise. It is a befitting initiative of BITS Pilani, BITS Law School, and Surana International Attorneys to remember the grandeur of Fali Nariman. As a jury member, I can say that it is going to be bestowed to an eminent and deserving professional in the presence of some of the most respected individuals in the country. Best regards, Lalit Bhasin. I'll end with a quick note. Recently, India marked a historic milestone of 75th anniversary of our constitution, and we did organize an event around it, if you remember. And the constitution was adopted in November 1949. In the following year, in 1950, a young Fali graduated with a law degree in Mumbai and went on to practice law for the next 74 years. Mr. Fali Nariman once said that he fought many cases, including some of the landmark constitutional cases of immense value, but he lost more than he won. But as someone once said, some battles are not fought for victory. They are fought to tell the world that there's someone on the battlefield. A larger-than-life Fali Nariman was born to stand out. He entered the world with a purpose to change it for good. And he did it through law. Ordained as a Parsi priest, the bashful judicial giant was an epitome of humility. For him, legal practice was really like wet cement. Whatever he did left an impression. After fighting his court battles brilliantly and inspiring millions in the process, he left. India will always remain indebted to Fali Sam Nariman. And I'm deeply grateful to my dear friend, Dr. Vinod Surana, for conceiving of this idea to honor him, to think about him, to collectively reflect on his work, and to hear some of the brightest minds in the profession here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dean Bharadwaj, for your welcome address. No introduction to this event would be complete without recognizing Surana and Surana International Attorneys, our collaborators in this initiative. Surana and Surana has long been committed to legal excellence and actively fosters the growth of young legal minds through moot courts and advocacy training. To share his thoughts on this occasion, I now want to invite Dr. Vinod Surana, Managing Partner Surana and Surana International Attorneys, to deliver the introductory remarks.
Honorable Justice Roshan Salvi, Senior Advocate, respected Mr. Arvind Datar, Dean and dear friend, Mr. Ashish Bharadwaj, dear students from the BITS Law School, viewers from across India, my very humble greetings to this extremely distinguished gathering. Today is a day of great personal satisfaction as we have come together to remember a legendary lawyer, an illustrious son of India, Mr. Fali S. Nariman. My law firm and I have had a long and deep association with Mr. Nariman. He was the patron of my firm's academic initiatives project from 2009 to 2024. He was the head of our advisory board of academic initiatives. And under this program, we run the world's largest moot court competition project. I would like to speak to my young student friends. Today, we are here for the Fali Nariman Memorial Lecture and to give away the Fali Nariman Memorial Award. It is not only a celebration of the life and accomplishment of Mr. Nariman, with whom I share a long relationship. He was a mentor for me. But today is also an opportunity for us to pause and to reflect upon his life, upon his virtues, to learn about the ingredients which made him great. It is an opportunity for us to reflect, be inspired, and to imbibe his qualities as we ourselves aspire to improve and progress. I first met Mr. Nariman in Goa at the Bar Association of India's conference in the year 2000, where we celebrated 40 years of the Advocates Act. That was the beginning of a long journey. That was a point when I first met him, and it made a big, deep impact on me. Students, there are 7 qualities in Mr. Nariman which I have observed and I would love to imbibe. The first quality was hard work, homework, humility. He was always prepared when he used to stand up to speak at a conference or in the courtroom. Very well prepared, notes made, facts at his fingertips, well researched. So hard work, homework, humility. The dean mentioned this morning, he mentioned about the humility of this person. He would walk in for a conference, and I have seen him sit in the lobby quietly, no airs. He would not make a show of his presence. I've seen so many of such instances. So the first lesson which I learned was hard work, homework, humility. The second lesson which I learned from him, and I've observed him, I could see that he was a very disciplined person. Every minute would be productively utilized. He had tremendous self-control. Control on his food, control on his daily routine, sleeping habits, hours of working. The third quality which I admired in him was his dedication to truth, justice, and rule of law. The dean mentioned that he would never hesitate to stand up and speak truth to the powers. He was fearless. When I remember in one of the conferences when he was speaking, I was actually sitting there in the audience and trembling because of the strong words and the sharp expressions which he used. to describe some of the happenings in the court. I was frightened. My God, how can somebody be so harsh? He never used any harsh or foul language, very measured words. But he would stand up and speak with tremendous courage. The fourth quality which I liked in him was he always had absolute clarity of purpose, clarity in thought, clarity in expression. They say that this is one of the qualities of great people: accurate perception, correct expression. The sixth quality which I liked in him, which I observed in him, was he was a man of few words, measured words, impactful words, spoken with calmness and clarity. I have not heard him raise his voice. I have not heard him speak in a harsh tone. And I have seen the impact of words when they are delivered calmly, in few numbers. He wouldn't say the same thing in many words. And the seventh point, which I learnt and admired about him, was he was tremendously patient. He had the habit of listening much more than speaking. This is one of the qualities of great people. Now, why am I telling you these 7 qualities which I have observed? While we are here to hear Justice Lalit, hear Mr. Arvind Datar, hear the panelists, as students, I consider myself also a student, lifelong student. Let us see what we can observe, reflect upon, and imbibe into our lives. We have today the honor of the first memorial lecture being delivered by Justice Lalit. Many of his great qualities are reflected and magnified in his judgments. He is known for being humble, being compassionate, being patient. As lawyers, we have seen these qualities lived by him in the court. Honorable Justice also has absolute clarity of thought and expression, accuracy of expression. Again, like all successful people, Justice Lalit has a very strong work ethic, highly disciplined, long, hard hours of work, lot of self-control when it comes to food, when it comes to meeting people. Time is given a lot of importance. We have seen during his tenure as a judge, his commitment to institution building and reforming the judiciary. This is one of the lessons which I have learned. All great people are committed institution builders. We also have senior advocate Mr. Arvind Datar here. I've had a few occasions to interact with him, to observe him. A very unique person in the sense, and I'm not flattering, sir. You're a lawyer, very good lawyer. More importantly, you're a law teacher. You teach in law schools, in the Institute of Company Secretaries, in the Institute of Chartered Accountants, in the Institute of Cost and Works Accountants. And I have a great respect for teachers. And he's a writer, a prolific writer. He has written so many books. The ability to teach and to write, I believe, makes a person great. In his arguments, I have seen absolute clarity of thought and expression. Not a single misplaced word, not a single harsh word. If you have the opportunity, students, I would please reach out and have a few words with him after the program. Very, very measured words, very soft spoken, like the homeopathic medicine. Deep, deep impact, very sweet. No side effects. I have seen his way of working. Very disciplined. Very, very long hours of work. You give him 150 pages in the evening by about 10 o'clock. Next morning, it is ready. He has read every word, made his notes, penciled in the margin the important points, tagged. Very hardworking. I have myself personally experienced compassion being practiced by him. So a few years ago, we approached him for a case and we said, sir, this is an important case concerning the use of chemical fertilizers in farming and how it is affecting the environment, the underwater resources. And he said, I will take up this cause. I will not charge a single pie. He read the papers, huge volume of papers. He read all of them. He was ready. So why am I repeating these traits? As students, we have to learn from the lives of these people, whether it is Mr. Nariman, whether it is Justice Lalit, whether it is Mr. Lalit Basin, whether it is Mr. Arvind Datar, whether it is Justice Roshan Salvi. More than their words, let us look at their lives, because lives speak louder than words. When there is a match between the words and the life, that person is a very genuine person. In Hindi, they say, karni or kathni. What you speak and what you do must match. So, my request to you children, the students here, is to observe them and also hear them. And after the program is over, go back and reflect on what you can imbibe in your lives. That, I think, will be a great learning and a great takeaway. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Surana. It is our privilege to now welcome Honorable Justice U.U. Lalit, former Chief Justice of India, eminent jurist, and a member of the Advisory Council of BITSLAW School. Justice Uday Umesh Lalit served as the 49th Chief Justice of India, known for his distinguished career spanning advocacy, judicial leadership, and institutional reform. Elevated directly to the Supreme Court from the bar in 2014, he became only the 6th judge in India's history to do so. His tenure as the Chief Justice of India in 2022 was marked by a commitment to judicial efficiency and access to justice. Before his appointment to the bench, Justice Lalit was a renowned advocate, specializing in criminal law, practicing in the Bombay High Court and the Supreme Court of India. He served as a amicus curiae in significant environmental and public interest cases and was appointed as a special public prosecutor in the 2G Spectrum case in 2011. As a judge, his tenure was defined by landmark rulings on constitutional and criminal law, along with his role as executive chairman of the National Legal Service Authority, where he worked to expand legal aid and access to justice. His judicial philosophy reflects a deep commitment to procedural fairness, legal clarity, and institutional integrity. Although he is unable to join us in person today, we are honored to have him with us virtually. I now invite Justice Lalit to deliver the presidential address. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Roshan Salvi, former Judge, High Court of Bombay. Mr. Arvind Datar, learned senior advocate, who will be delivering this year's Fali Nariman Memorial Lecture, and who will also be the recipient of Fali Nariman Achievement Award, and Dr. Ashish Bhardwaj, Dean, Faculty of Law, Dr. Vinod Surana, Mrs. Surana, who have been responsible for tying up with BITSLAW School to have this function. And what a brilliant idea to commemorate something in the memory of late jurist Fali Nariman. I consider myself privileged that I am part of this particular occasion, and I'm sorry I couldn't remain personally present there, but I'm trying to be part of the gathering, part of the proceedings through the virtual mode. So please pardon me and bear with me. I heard about Fali Nariman for the first time way back in 1975. As we are all aware, 1975 emergency was declared. And I still recollect the newspaper heading that day, the president proclaims emergency in the country. In two separate columns on either side, one column had the news, Mr. Khorakiwala withdraws, because Khorakiwala till then was the counsel appearing for Mrs. Gandhi in her election matters. And in the other side of the column was again a small news item. Nariman resigns. And Nariman used to be Additional Solicitor General. He was appointed sometime in 1971. As we all know, he fought what is called St. Xavier's, which is one of the leading judgments on minority educational institutions' rights in the capacity as Additional Solicitor General. But he was a sitting Additional Solicitor General and he resigned soon after the declaration of emergency. I was studying them then, and I wasn't quite aware of what exactly this person, Fali Nariman, stood for or stood by. But what impression which I gathered was that here is a man who can stand up even on this occasion when the emergency has been declared by the president, and the significance or the repercussions of that, which notwithstanding, he had the capacity, the guts, the courage to resign. Therefore, that was the impression which I carried about this man. And I saw him in action for the first time, sometime in 1984. When he had come down to Bombay, I used to practice in Bombay High Court. First 2 years I practiced in Bombay, 83 to 85. He had come down from Delhi to argue what is called Escorts versus Life Insurance Corporation. And I shouldn't say it, as a student, I used to frequent the courts. I have seen number of senior counsel. But to my mind, the day I saw Fali argue, it was as if, we say in Marathi, Aji mya Brahma pahile. So therefore, I have seen the God himself, the Brahma today. And that was the impression which, as a youngster, as a young lawyer, I carried. He argued the matter for admission for 7 to 9 days before Justice S.K. Desai sitting singly. And that was brilliance personified. It was as if, the entire kind of, the advocacy, the finer points of advocacy, the court craft, how you present yourself, everything was getting unfolded before the youngsters like me. The matter was admitted and it came up for final hearing before the then Chief Justice Konda Madhav Reddy sitting with Justice Rege. Again, I had one more opportunity to see the talent getting sort of, brilliantly displayed. But at this juncture, it was through final hearing. So that was my second occasion to see Fali Nariman in action. And it left complete sort of, impression upon the young mind that this is how a lawyer must be, this is how a lawyer ought to argue, and this is how he must present himself. As luck would have it, in 85, I shifted to Delhi, 85 sometime October, November. And what do I see? The very same matter now in appeal before a constitution bench of the Supreme Court. This time it was before 5 judges, the presiding judge being Justice Chennappa Reddy with Justice Venkatramaya, Balakrishna Iradi, Justice Khalid, and Justice R.B. Mishra being part of the bench. Again, the same kind of, repeat performance, but this time with a slight distinction. This time he was arguing before a constitution bench of the Supreme Court. And the deference that it required, Fali Nariman displayed everything. Around the same time, say around 86, 87, started what is called Union Carbide litigation. He used to appear for Union Carbide. And again, another marathon, which went on before the Constitution bench presided over by Justice R.S. Pathak. 2 brilliant performances, 2 marathon races. I watched him all through and through. To the extent it was permissible, trying to find time from my usual engagements, which were not so much. So therefore I could devote time and watch this man, this great performance. It was as if, that ballet was actually going on in front of everybody's eyes. To relish it, to acknowledge it, and to absorb whatever the finer qualities which were on display. Over the years, because then thereafter I joined Mr. Sorabji's chamber, I've always considered, these 3 persons to be the, what is Brahma, Vishnu and Mahesh of the trinity of the bar. Fali being 1, Soli being 2nd, and the 3rd being Parasaran. I've always considered these 3 to be the giants that I have ever come across. And I was part of Sorabji's chamber, so therefore naturally, in almost every matter of significance, Fali Nariman would be on the other side and Sorabji on this side. So now, rather than being a bystander where I watched the performance of this great person from a distance, I would now see it, how he would demolish the arguments which we were advancing, and how best to counterattack or counter the submissions made by this great man. It was a great learning to be on the other side. Over a period of time, I had the great fortune to assist Mr. Nariman in some of the matters. Then at a later point of time, after my designation, I also had opportunity to oppose him in some matters. That was again another sort of, great innings or great learning performance. The third case which I consider in my times, I never saw him argue Xavier's. I saw him argue what is called TMA Pi. I saw him argue All India Judges Association cases where he took up the cause almost like an amicus curiae. But I could not watch his performance in NJAC matter. By that time, I was a judge, and since I was not part of this bench, whatever I could gather is only through the law reports. And another sterling performance. And if you ask me why that particular constitution amendment perished, the major reason behind that is no other than the greatest advocacy or the skills of advocacy of Mr. Fali Nariman. And he was definitely, according to me, responsible for seeing that the petitioners succeed in the matter. We all know that Fali Nariman was given Padma Bhushan way back in 1991. Padma Vibhushan he was conferred with sometime in 2007. But we also know that he was nominated to the Rajya Sabha. And of all the persons, of all the illustrious names who have been nominated to Rajya Sabha, pardon me if I say that he was the best of the lot, the greatest contributor. I have seen closely how he would keep polishing his speeches which he would give on the floor of Rajya Sabha, how he would try to contribute so far as the debates and the quality of debates in Rajya Sabha are concerned. And that's the special touch of this man, that whatever he did with greatest capacity, greatest contribution, and as Mr. Surana said, with great discipline. So discipline would be in every sphere. Sphere in the sense of timing, in the sense of being aware of dimensions of time, and at the same time, quality as well. So therefore, that's what Mr. Fali Nariman was for all of us. You know, have you read his books, which he came out with his book sometime just about last 10 years or so? And there's a very beautiful story or an anecdote which forms part of his book. And that tells us about an event where a particular Parsi gentleman approaches the legendary Sir Jamshedji Kanga and complained to him that there was an article in Gujarat Samachar, which is published from Bombay, with a caption where his picture was actually published on the very front page, and with a caption, Parsi Panchayat no Wafadar Kutro, that is to say, an obedient dog of Parsi Panchayat. And he was absolutely indignant and wanted to have an action taken against the newspaper. And very coolly, Sir Jamshedji Kanga asked him, today only few readers of Bombay Samachar know about you. Do you want the entire world to know about that? And that's a very, not a tongue-in-cheek reply, but a very brilliant way of understanding the implications of litigation, where exactly it takes to take some of the litigants, what level you get exposed to in the form of litigation. And that's a very brilliant analysis. And this is the incident or the anecdote which Fali Nariman has quoted in one of his books. I have seen over a number of years, last about say a decade or so, that so many youngsters have been influenced by the brilliance of those books, the anecdotes which form part of that book, and what it carries. It carries a beautiful analysis of a man who stood by so many sort of, ideals, who fought many legal battles, may be injured on some occasions, but always coming victorious when it comes to his commitment, his courage, his performance. At the end of it, and that's why it's a very brilliant idea which Dr. Ashish Bhardwaj said, that a lawyer joins sometime in 1950, soon after the Constitution gets adopted, and he had lived almost 74 out of last 75 years as an advocate, as a counsel, as a senior advocate. He had seen the journey. He had always been proud of that, maybe critical at times, but always believed in one theory that yes, our democracy, our democratic institutions and principles were so resilient that they would always come up on top, given whatever be the situation. And again, I'll go back to that particular part. He played his part by tendering resignation immediately upon proclamation of emergency. That's the man, that's what he stood for. Now, coming to today's Achievement Award, I used to consider Fali Nariman as an expert on commercial law side, civil law side, and constitutional law side. You couldn't have found a better name than Arvind Datar, who not only sort of excels in these branches of law, but as Mr. Surana said, he is a prolific writer, which again was a quality which was there on display by Mr. Nariman, but his quality on display was through articles, through contributions in Rajya Sabha. But here comes a man who is also displaying the same quality, being a prolific writer, and again a counsel of great eminence. So therefore, you couldn't have found a better man than Arvind Datar to confer upon him the Lifetime Achievement Award, and also inviting him to be the first person to give Fali Nariman Memorial Lecture. For my part, yes, I am associated with the advisory board, so I couldn't have asked for anything better than this, that on this inaugural lecture series day, I am being part of this gathering, and yes, I could actually share my views with everyone concerned. Thank you so much. Thank you.
We're truly honored to have you address us today. As we celebrate legal excellence, let us now turn from one distinguished stalwart, Justice Lalit, to another towering figure in the legal profession whom we are commemorating today, Fali S. Nariman. As Mr. and Justice Lalit mentioned, few legal minds have shaped Indian jurisprudence as profoundly as Fali Nariman. His career, spanning over 7 decades, was a testament to his deep commitment to constitutionalism, human rights, and the rule of law. To reflect on his life and contributions, we invite Professor Rahela Khorakiwala, faculty at BITSLAW School, to share her insights on Mr. Nariman's enduring legacy. Please, Professor Rahela Khorakiwala.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you once again for joining all of us here at BITSLAW School today, while I stand before you to honor a towering figure in the legal fraternity, a man whose life and legacy have left an indelible mark on the Indian legal system and the rule of law, Fali Nariman. His journey is not just a story of professional excellence, but also a testament to integrity, courage, and an unwavering commitment to justice. Fali Nariman often spoke about his early years and how they were shaped by the values of discipline, like everyone has mentioned, and education, which laid the foundation for his illustrious career. After completing his education here in Bombay, he embarked on a legal journey that would span over 7 decades, earning him the reputation of one of India's most distinguished jurists. Here at BITSLAW School, we also understand how important the formative years are, the importance of the values and discipline to be imparted to our students during these very decisive years. Nariman's career has always been marked by his fearless advocacy and his ability to stand up for what he believed was right, even in the face of adversity. His contributions to constitutional law and human rights jurisprudence are unparalleled. This was evident, like Justice Lalit mentioned, through the several landmark cases that he was a part of and those that have really shaped the legal landscape of India. As very brilliantly mentioned by Mr. Sriram Panchu on the passing of Mr. Nariman, and I quote, his stentorian voice and forceful delivery, unassailable logic, deep knowledge of the law, assiduous preparation, backed by a reputation of unwavering integrity, made him an opponent to dread. But he was fairness personified in his duty to the court and to the profession. And while he could bring down any senior lawyer with ease, he was very kind and encouraging to his juniors. But Fali Nariman was much more than just a brilliant lawyer. He was a statesman. He was a public intellectual par excellence. He was a man of principle. And as we heard, during the emergency of 1975, when democratic freedoms were under threat, he resigned as the Additional Solicitor General of India, refusing to compromise on his values. This act of courage and moral fortitude remains one of the defining moments of his career and a lesson in standing up for justice, no matter the cost. Nariman's legacy also extends beyond the courtroom. He was a prolific writer and thinker, authoring several books, including an autobiography from which we heard a lot of anecdotes that offer profound insights into his life and the legal system. He was a mentor to countless young lawyers, inspiring them to uphold the highest standards of professionalism and ethics. Fali Nariman's life teaches us the importance of integrity, the courage to stand by one's convictions, and the relentless pursuit of justice. He believed strongly in the power of the law to bring about positive change, and he dedicated his life to this and to upholding the Constitution and the rights of the citizens. Fali Nariman was unique in that he stood out boldly and strongly in conviction, in attitude, in thought, and in his speech. The best tribute we can pay and the best testament of our admiration and respect is to hold fast the traditions of Mr. Nariman, the traditions that he exemplified. In doing so, his legacy will be upheld. As we remember Fali Nariman today, almost a year to his death anniversary, let us not just celebrate his achievements, but also strive to embody the values he stood for. In a world where the rule of law is often challenged, his legacy serves as a beacon of hope and a reminder that the pursuit of justice is a noble and enduring endeavor. At BITS Law School, we strive to instill these very characteristics in our students and remind them of the legacy of Fali Nariman and the importance of standing by one's own convictions, especially at times of adversity. In honor of these principles, and as a tribute to Mr. Fali Nariman, the students of the Constitutional Law Society have put together a short film on the life and legacy of Mr. Fali Nariman. The film has been conceptualized by our second-year students, Pranjal Joshi, Pranjal Khajuria, and Gopika, and it has been filmed by Rachit and Devraj. We hope that watching this film will serve as a reminder of the pursuit of justice and the value of upholding the Constitution every single day. Thank you so much.
Fali Nariman, regarded as one of the best legal minds that this country has produced. His life has served as an inspiration not only for lawyers and law students, but also for the citizens of this country themselves.
Nariman was a strong believer in the Constitution of India and its role in shaping the political and legal landscape of the country. He was very vocal about interpreting it in a way that it protects the fundamental rights of people and upholds democratic values. Fali Nariman was a staunch advocate for judicial independence, a principle that he heavily defended in the Second Judge's Case 1993. His arguments were instrumental in establishing the collegium system that allowed for judicial appointments without executive interference. While he's primarily known for his legal work, Nariman has also been deeply involved in various social causes. He actively promoted legal awareness, ensuring that justice is not simply limited to courts. Through public lectures, legal aid clinics, and advocacy, he ensured that citizens are aware of their rights and actively participated in democratic processes.
My first exposure to Fali Nariman was reading his autobiography Before Memory Fades. Though at the time of reading, I was not quite well versed enough in the law to understand the nuances of his arguments. However, during the course of my law school journey, I came across quite a few articles detailing the instrumental impact he has had in shaping the Indian legal landscape, including his involvement in the landmark S.P. Gupta and Golaknath judgments, as well as his role in shaping human rights.
So I found out about Mr. Nariman when I first joined law school. His autobiography had just come out Before Memory Fades, and it was quite the rage among my peers at law school. And finally, giving in to peer pressure, I picked up a copy and I read through his work. What struck me was it was not just like a book that was filled with lots of legal terms or like something that was very hard for a law student, first-year law student to access, but it was very accessible and it was very humble also. And the best thing what I really enjoyed was the text was very self-deprecating, like he could poke fun at himself, which was something very new to me because I was under the impression as a first-year law student that lawyers are very serious and they are quite, straight-jacketed.
Mr. Fali Nariman's legacy has reshaped my understanding of justice and the rule of law by reminding me that law is not merely an exercise in intellect, but also one of the heart. As he wisely put, law is a matter of the heart as well as the head. You must have compassion. It is one of the greatest qualities. This inspired me to approach every new case I read with both analytical precision as well as a deep empathy for those affected. Mr. Nariman's values and commitments to fairness, secularism, and human dignity motivate me to move beyond mere legal technicalities and instead embrace a compassionate pursuit of justice, a lesson I take with me as I forge on my path in the legal profession.
For me, the connection with Mr. Fali Nariman somehow feels personal, because in 2018, when I was preparing for my master's, he came out with a book titled God Save the Honorable Supreme Court, where he discussed about two pressing issues that the court was dealing with during those days. The first was the press conference of judges, which was taken by the four senior-most judges of the Supreme Court, where they dealt with certain internal functionings of the court and released some data about the court. The second was a sitting justice of the High Court was held in contempt of the Supreme Court. This book made me think about the issues the Supreme Court was facing, and then in turn led to my doctoral work on the Supreme Court of India.
Some of Mr. Nariman's qualities which were demonstrated throughout his illustrious legal career was his courage and his commitment to constitutional values. For instance, he stood up to an oppressive government during the emergency. I believe these values are very relevant in today's times, and I hope to emulate them further in my own career.
Fali Nariman, in my view, has been one of the most influential lawyers to the idea of a living Indian constitution, especially its core values of justice, rule of law, and liberalism. Whether we look back on his arguments on the basic structure doctrine or on judicial independence, he truly stands out for his constitutional commitment. I believe young lawyers should be inspired by his tenacity to fight for what is right in the face of daunting challenges and in an ever-changing society.
One of the defining moments of Nariman's career was his resignation as Additional Solicitor General in 1975, a principled stand against emergency and suspension of democratic rights. At a time when many remained silent or compliant, his decision to step down was a powerful act of resistance, reaffirming his commitment towards constitutional values. Unafraid to speak truth to power, he consistently advocated for institutional reforms and governmental overreach. His engagement in public discourse went beyond the law to the issues of governance, religious tolerance, free speech, citing his legacy as nation's moral conscience.
Hello, I'm Ashish Bhardwaj. I'm sure a lot has already been shared about the legendary Fali Nariman, about his work, his books, his autobiography. Let me share something on a lighter note. While we were all busy in the first semester of the first academic year of BITS Law School in Mumbai, an important conference was happening in New Delhi. I think it was in September 2023. It was hosted by the UN Commission on International Trade Law, where Fali Nariman delivered a fabulous inaugural speech. He narrated a very interesting story, which I will read for all of you. And I quote, "There is a sign in the window of a shoe repair shop in downtown Boston. It is run by a Greek immigrant who's fed up with customer complaints. So he puts up a sign in a triangle connecting three expressions: fast service, low price, high quality. At the top of the triangle are the words fast service. And at the bottom two ends of the triangle are low price, high quality. And underneath is a short but all important instruction: pick any two." What's the point I'm making? In these times, what we have learned from the great Fali Nariman is that the three together, fast service, low price, high quality, are absolutely unattainable in legal practice and also in legal education. I and all my colleagues here in BITS believe in this profound insight. I hope all law students and the early stage practitioners in the profession will reflect on this. So let's choose our priorities and battles wisely. Fali Sam Nariman chose the right battles in his life and showed us how they are fought. Thank you.
The Fali Nariman Memorial Award was instituted to recognize individuals who exemplify the principles upheld by Mr. Nariman: unwavering integrity, ethical leadership, and a lifelong commitment to justice and the rule of law. It seeks to honor those who made an exceptional contribution to the legal profession, shaped legal discourse, and upheld the highest ethical standards. To elaborate on the award selection process and its significance, we invite Professor Chinmay Deshmukh from BITSLAW School.
Good morning to our distinguished guests, members of the legal community, faculty, and students. We've just heard varied reflections on the extraordinary life of Mr. Nariman. I'm not going to repeat those traits again, but his legacy is not merely one to be remembered, but one that continues to shape the legal profession today. It is in this spirit that I would like to take a few minutes to talk about the purpose of this award, the selection process, and the esteemed jury that guided it. At its best, an award is not merely an acknowledgement of excellence, it's a reaffirmation of values that define a profession. The Fali Nariman Memorial Award was conceived with this purpose: to recognize individuals whose work represents the highest standards of legal expertise, ethical integrity, and an unwavering commitment to justice. Mr. Nariman's contribution to constitutional jurisprudence, his fearless advocacy for judicial independence, and his lifelong dedication to the rule of law set a standard that continues to inspire generation of legal professions. This award is a reflection of those ideals, honoring those who have not only excelled in their legal field, but have carried forward that principle that defined Mr. Nariman's career. When we opened nominations for this inaugural award, we received more than 75 nominations from across the legal profession: practitioners, academics, and jurists, each with a body of work that has shaped Indian law in a meaningful way. The diversity of nominations was a testament to the depth of legal excellence in this country, but it also posed a challenge. How do you select just one individual from such an exceptional group? The selection process, therefore, was guided by clear and objective criteria. Broadly, the jury considered three key aspects. First, a distinguished career, whether in legal practice, academia, or public service, demonstrating sustained excellence and impact. Second, a commitment to constitutionalism, ethics, and professional integrity, principles that lie at the heart of a just and independent legal system. And third, a body of work and mentorship that extends beyond mere technical expertise, one that has shaped legal thought, influenced practice, and contributed meaningfully to the development of law. Each nomination was thoroughly reviewed, and after careful consideration, the jury arrived at a unanimous decision, one that reflects both legal brilliance and a lifetime of contributions to the profession. A process of this significance required a jury of exceptional experience, discernment, and judgment. We were privileged to have an esteemed panel, each bringing a legacy of leadership across different spheres of law. I'd like to take a moment to introduce them. Justice Sanjay Gangapurwala, former Chief Justice of Madras High Court, has played a key role in shaping Indian jurisprudence. His clarity in judicial reasoning and commitment to legal reforms have been evident throughout his career. Before his tenure in Madras, He served as acting Chief Justice of Bombay High Court. His decisions reflect a deep understanding of constitutional and commercial law, and in his early career, he represented major financial institutions and contributed to key legal commissions, creating a lasting impact on both public and private law. Dr. Lalit Bhasin is a stalwart of Indian legal profession with a career spanning over 6 decades in corporate law, arbitration, and institutional reform. As president of the Society of Indian Law Firms and the Bar Association of India, Mr. Bhasin has played a key role in shaping legal policy and professional ethics in India. Mr. Percival Billimoria, who is here with us today, a distinguished senior advocate and chartered accountant, is an authority in commercial litigation, arbitration, and regulatory law. He's represented clients in landmark corporate cases, setting legal precedents that have significantly influenced India's arbitration and dispute resolution framework. Dr. Aparna Chandra, a leading constitutional law scholar and professor at NLSIU Bangalore, who will be joining us virtually for the panel, has made significant contributions to the study of judicial process reforms, rights adjudication, and comparative constitutional law. Her extensive work in legal reform, along with her role as amicus curiae in cases of national importance, particularly in gender and human rights, has shaped both academia and legal practice. And finally, Mr. Naveen Raju, a corporate legal strategist, serves as General Counsel and Executive Vice President at Mahindra & Mahindra, overseeing legal and regulatory compliance for one of India's largest conglomerates. This jury brought a diverse and comprehensive perspective to the selection process, ensuring that the final choice reflected not just eminence, but the ethical and intellectual depth that this award represents. As we move forward, the significance of this award will not just be defined by those who receive it, but by the conversation it sparks and the standards it upholds. It's a reminder that legal excellence is not just about skills, but about purpose, that the integrity of the law depends on those who practice it with clarity, independence, and sense of responsibility. Before I conclude, on behalf of the entire organizing committee, I extend my deep gratitude for jury for their time, effort, and wisdom, and to all those who took part in the nomination process. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Deshmukh, for outlining the entire process, the jury selection, and significance of this award. To announce the recipient of the inaugural Fali Nariman Memorial Award, I invite Dean Ashish Bharadwaj to the stage and Dr. Vinod Surana as well to join him. Please.
All right. We have deliberately kept one of the finest for the last, but I'll very quickly introduce. It is my privilege, it is our privilege, to announce that the inaugural Fali Nariman Memorial Award is being awarded to a very distinguished advocate whose contributions go much beyond the profession. They percolate down to academia, to society, and it is none other than Mr. Arvind Datar himself. I'll take only 2 minutes to very quickly give a very brief introduction. It's important for everyone to know that this year also marks 45 years since he started his legal career. 45 years. And with expertise spanning constitutional law, commercial law, taxation law, Mr. Datar has appeared before the Supreme Court, various high courts, international tribunals, including the International Court of Justice. He's a renowned scholar. He has authored influential commentaries on taxation, constitutional law, and he's been a visiting faculty at leading institutions, including the National Judicial Academy. A man who believes that there are no shortcuts at all. His leadership in institutions like the Palkiwala Foundation reflects his deep commitment not only to legal education, but also to public service. I'll share my own personal anecdote. When I met him at his home in Madras last month, I was very pleasantly surprised by the versatility and the expanse of his areas of interest. And I'm not talking about constitution law or taxation here, which is already mastered. I'm referring to literature, quantum physics, neuroscience, psychology, and economics. I will also share with everyone that he's a big fan of James Bond. So much so that his phone ringtone is the 007 tone. So much so that his personal email address has the number 007. As one of the finest lawyers today, he believes that the most important things, I think, are number one, the ability to say no. And number two, never give up. Never Give Up is also the title of the chapter of a book which is kept on this first table, which is written by Indu. It's called Legal Eagles, some of the finest lawyers that this country has seen, and there's a chapter dedicated to him. So Mr. Datta's career stands as a model of unshakable integrity, utmost modesty, high ethical standards, and deep respect for democratic principles. As my colleague Chinmay said, values that this award, which we have put together with Surana and Surana International Attorneys, seeks to honor. Mr. Datar, may I now invite you to accept the award and come on the stage. There's one more thing that we are. Am I audible? Maybe I'll go to the mic. Sorry. Why don't you take a seat, please? I'll just take 1 minute. This is a calendar that we, the BITS Pilani and BITSLAW School, are offering to some of our guests. It's a slightly complicated one, so I wanted to, and this is the first one that we are giving this year. We're already late a little bit in 2025, but the first one is for you, Mr. Datar. It's made out of fabric, and we've done this with a very small rural women's collective in a remote part of Tamil Nadu. It's called Thurigai, and here it says on the second page, this calendar has been derived from sustainable materials and can be reused as a bag or as a cushion cover. Scan the QR code to learn more. So each of these can be taken out, and there are handles here. You can take the handles out and they become tote bags. So there are essentially 6 tote bags here. The second thing that we did was we explained, we shared in English and in Hindi the core values of BITSLAW School. And these women, I mean, of course, they are very proficient in Tamil language. We asked them to translate it in Tamil and then try to understand and interpret what these words mean for them and put it down in a creative fashion. So the first core value of BITSLAW School, justice, this one is a no-brainer. So they came up with this. We did not give these designs to them. This is how a citizen of the country is understanding some of these keywords. Integrity. So they drew, and these are all handmade. They drew a lush green tree with strong roots and birds that are coming from all over the place of different colors. Then the next one here is transparency. So even if you look deeper and go deeper in your work or in your life, you're not going to see a variation compared to what you see when you zoom out. And the next is social consciousness, where people who are different in many different aspects can still come together and work cohesively as a group, as a unit, as a society. So I thought it's, well, there's one more, sorry, inclusivity, where infinity of thoughts, imagination, and ideas are all within our reach. And we can be inclusive as a society and as people. There's one more on excellence, which is a lone star that you can shine bright in a lot of chaos. So the first one is for you, Mr. Datar.
Can I also please invite Mr. Percival Billimoria and Justice Roshan Salvi to participate in the formal felicitation of Mr. Datar? Please, if you could, please join us on stage.
That's from the jury and from that.
Justice UU Lalit, who appeared on give the lecture virtually, Justice Roshan Salvi, Percy Billimoria, Dr. Bharadwaj, Vinod, Surana, Mrs. Surana, distinguished members of the audience. Sorry, we're running late, so I'm not mentioning more names. It's not a cliche, but I'm really, really overwhelmed to be the first recipient of this memorial award. I must thank the jury. I must thank BITS Pilani for conferring on me this award. And what makes it so special is that it is in memory of Mr. Fali Nariman, whom I had the privilege of working with in quite a few cases. Dr. Bharadwaj told me that I should speak on what were the lessons I learned as a lawyer working with Fali Nariman. And this could be of great use to the young students who are, some of you are going to be the Fali Narimans, the Soli Sorabjis, the Palkiwalas of the future in the years to come. Actually, it's a slightly emotional moment for me because exactly a year ago, January 21st to be precise, that I had my last meeting with Fali Nariman. I'm normally in Delhi from Tuesday to Thursday. I'm never there on the weekend. But there's a wedding of a very dear friend's daughter, which I couldn't miss. And I had met Mr. Nariman a few months earlier, and something told me that I should go and see him. So the wedding was in the evening, And as all of you know, Delhi weddings are invariably late also. So I thought that why not I take the earlier flight and spend half an hour with Mr. Nariman. So I sent him a mail a week earlier and said that, sir, I'm coming for the wedding. It's at 6 o'clock. And the reception is at 6 o'clock. Can I come and have a cup of tea with you and see you? If tea is not convenient, what time will be convenient to see you? I've still got his mail. He said, dear Arvind, come anytime you want. It'll be lovely to see you. That's a 2-line mail. So I changed my flight and I went earlier. And what was expected to be a half an hour meeting, we spent 2.5 hours chatting of various things in life. He was an absolute, in his old spirit, telling me stories about Mullah and what happened in the Bombay High Court and so on. And little did I know that 2 or 3 weeks later, he'd be no more. And I would have cursed myself if I had not taken the trouble of going and seeing him at the last point of time. And then in the January 21st, 2024, which is exactly a year earlier. I had the privilege of working with Mr. Nariman before the Excise Tribunal, before the Kerala High Court, before the Madras High Court, and before the Supreme Court, of course. We worked together. Contrary to what somebody said, he was not very mild or very patient. Those of us who worked with him, we know that he had quite a temper in the conference. So, but there was something uniquely lovable and likable about Mr. Nariman. Now, what are his qualities? And the importance of recounting this on this occasion is that all of us learn from our predecessors who serve as role models. And the famous motivational speaker Zig Ziglar once said that success leaves clues. If a person has done a certain number of things, and if you follow him as a role model, the odds are very bright that you will reach the same result. If I ask you, and this is Zig Ziglar's example, if I ask you, what is 6 into 7, you will tell me it's 42. If I ask you what is 12 into 8, you'll tell me it's 96. And if I tell you what is 243 into 346, you may not able to answer instantly, but given pen and paper, you'll come at the correct result. And the reason, Zig Ziglar says, is that you know the formula. Once you know the formula, then it's up to you to apply the same formula and you'll reach the same levels of success. And therefore, ever since I was a student in the Madras Law College, Palkhiwala was a role model to me. I also wanted to be a tax lawyer, so I did law in the morning, I did cost accounting in the evening. I couldn't do CA because it would require me to go several weeks out of Madras for audits. So I decided to do accounting in the evening. My goal was to learn accounting, so I'd be a good tax lawyer. And that's how I did it. And then I used to study the lives of these people. And one thing I'll recommend today to all youngsters, which you must do, is to read the biographies of these autobiographies and the biographies of these great lawyers. Before Memory Fades is fantastic. You must also read Roses in December. You must read Settleward's autobiography, Hidayatullah's autobiography, my own Boswell, and so on. These are very, very important. According to me, they help me a lot in understanding how great people have reached that particular height. I was blessed because in the Madras Connemara Library, which is one of the 3 national libraries in India, surprisingly, there is a huge shelf called legal biographies. And I made it a point to read virtually every one of them. And you'll be surprised, one of the fascinating autobiographies is by Kailash Nath Kadju, the earlier law minister. Fabulous book. Then another book by Rufus Isaacs, who became Lord Reading. He was the first Jew. He became Lord Chief Justice and then took the title of Lord Reading. He became Viceroy of India. And there's a famous person called R.F.E. Houston, who is a very common biographer. And in Rufus Isaacs' biography, I learned one lesson. His senior was Lawson Walton, And the senior told him that, Rufus, be the first person to come to chambers and be the last person to leave. Because you never know, when a solicitor wants a work, he'll come to the chambers and he'll find you there and you may get a brief. But I learned a very important lesson from him. Rufus Isaacs made it a point to get up at 4 and work till 8 without a break. After 8, he would have his breakfast, bath, etc., go to court, work till 4:30, chambers 5:30, and then he would go to Parliament. He was a KC MP. So these are the various examples I keep studying, and I see how these people do it. Anthony Trollope was not a lawyer, but a great writer, the most prolific writer, and he had the habit of getting up at 5:30 and writing till 8:30 every single day. And you must read his autobiography, where he says that I wrote for 3 hours every day. He was the Postmaster General of England. He set up the post office in Egypt. He set up the post office in Mesopotamia. So he was a very busy man. He was not just a writer. But he said by getting up at 5:30 and writing till 8:30, and it's very interesting how times have changed. He had a person who got £5 a year to give him a cup of tea every hour. And he used to write time 250 words per hour. And the remarkable thing is, he said, I never missed a deadline in my life, which I'm ashamed to say I've missed every deadline in my life. But he never missed a deadline in his life. And the best thing is, the kind of dedication is fascinating. He was traveling by ship to Cairo, to Alexandria, and there was violent sea turbulence and got seasick. So he said, I would open the porthole, throw up, close it, and again start writing from 5:30 to 8:30. And the best joke was, the best part of the fascinating thing was, if he finished at 8:10, he would not stop. He'll start writing the next book. So the reason why I'm telling you is the importance of reading biographies is you get life lessons which you can implement. And these are the clues which tell you, dedicating 3 hours to writing and so on and so forth. Now, what do I learn from Mr. Nariman? I just jotted down the points because Dr. Baroda told me that this will be useful to the young students, some kind of an encouragement. Now, the first thing was, what I learned from him was outstanding court craft. In his book, in Memory Faith, he said a couple of times he was harsh, but I think Justice Dalvi would have seen him as a junior practicing in the Bombay High Court. He would be very, very impatient, irritable in conference, especially with the other solicitors and chartered accountants. He would express his anger. And but once we came to court, he never raised his voice. I've never seen him, at least in the matters I worked with him, never crossed swords with the court. Outstanding court craft. And this is a common trait among lawyers. The late Mohan Kumar Mangalam, who was also an outstanding lawyer in Madras, he always said that, remember, it is the lawyer's life, but the lawyer's bread and butter, but the client's life. You get nothing by irritating the court. So always be calm and patient. And I'll give you one example which is very, very important. I mentioned this in Orissa when I gave a lecture there. My senior, Mr. Natarajan, was Mohan Kumar Mangalam's junior. And used to always tell him, that don't try to portray your wisdom. We have to get success for the client in the most ethical way possible. So don't irritate the judge. Now, there is a famous case called R versus Islington in administrative law. All of us pronounce it as R versus Islington because island, so Islington. Now, Mohan Kumar Mangalam had studied in England from the age of 10 and became a barrister at 25. So he virtually spoke like an Englishman, and he lived in England for 14, 15 years. And actually, it's not Islington, it's a place called Islington. It's not Islington. So when he was the respondent, counsel, and lawyer after lawyer for the petitioner kept on saying, my lord knows R versus Islington, R versus Islington. And he would tell my senior, the guy doesn't know, it's Islington. System, how do you know? He said, my dear chap, I've lived in England. I know it's Islington. So Justice Somasundaram was the judge. Then when he started arguing, he said, what happened to that R versus Islington, R versus Islington? Then Mr. Mohan Kumar Mangalam's turn came and he said, my lord, as your lordship knows, the famous case of R versus Islington. R versus Islington. And then when they came out, my senior asked him, sir, you told me it's Islington, but you kept on repeating Islington. he says, what will I get by showing the judge is wrong? That's court craft. I have to get success for my client. I don't have to show off my knowledge that I know more than him. So that was the trait of Mr. Nariman. The way he would be very angry in the conference, but when we went to court, he was absolutely courtesy personified. Even if the judge made a completely off the irrelevant remark, he would simply smile, push it aside, and continue. So the first point which I noted was the court craft that he did. Second point which I learned was he spent enormous time on every case. It was not just a T20 match, just read something and go to court and argue. He took much fewer cases, that's what I noted. But he had extraordinary attention to detail. And I'll tell you, I've got examples. You see, normally in tax, if you're a tax lawyer, every assessment year is a unit, right? And because the time taken in our cases for the matter to reach the High Court or Supreme Court, by the time the case starts and reaches the High Court or Supreme Court, there are 8-9 assessment years are involved because cases keep piling up. Same matters are arising year after year. To the credit of Mr. Nariman, I found he would insist on seeing every assessment year, every commissioner's order, every tribunal's order. And I would say, why are we doing it? We know the first year and the last year, we know why bother. But to my surprise, we could get real nuggets of useful facts coming in between. So it was extraordinary attention to detail. And kindly note, when you practice, please remember the facts. I'll again tell a story of Mohan Kumaramangalam. He was underground in the communist movement. He started practice late in 1953. And his father was the Chief Minister of Madras at one time. So Mohan met Chief Justice Mahajan and asked him, sir, what advice would you give to a young lawyer? And this is very, very important. And Chief Justice Mahajan told him, son, remember 3 things. First, study the judge, study the facts, and then if you have time, study the law. So this is the thing. So Nariman's quality was extraordinary attention to facts. Now the next point which I wanted to mention was, in his book he has mentioned that once Mr. Daftari came to his house for dinner in Bombay when he was a much younger lawyer, and Daftari told him that, look, pay attention to as much thinking as in preparing. That is, keep thinking about your case. And there are 2 parallels which I found here. In Hyderabad, we are doing a very, very important case for MRF. It was a case impacting all the tire companies. And we would meet in the evening. And I remember going into his suite. He had come in the morning and he was lying on the sofa and just thinking. And I just kept quiet. And 8-10 minutes, he was thinking about something and constantly point. And ever you sit outside the court also, he'll be thinking, making some notes, making some last-minute changes. So he said thinking about the brief is as important as reading. And I draw a parallel because one of the greatest lawyers I briefed was late R. Keshava Iyengar. You may not have heard of him. He was Mr. Parasaran's father. Mr. Parasaran is now 97. Keshava Iyengar was born in 1900. I briefed him in 93 because he was like a role model to me. You see, in Madras Law College, after the emergency, we had 1 year of classes. But second year onward, we had frequent strikes. For some silly reason, there'll be a strike or there'll be some boycott. So, as Surana knows, the advantage of Madras High Court, it is just next to the law college is next to the High Court. So I had the privilege that moment the college went on strike, I would just rush and go to the High Court. And there I've heard Sirvai, I heard Mridul, I heard Dr. Chitale, I heard Nariman himself in a sugar matter, and I would listen to all these arguments. But one person who impressed me immensely was Keshava Iyengar. He wore that full dhoti with a coat and a turban and so on. He was born in 1900. If you read 1 ITR page 3, it is Keshava Iyengar for the SSC and Patanjali Shastri for the commissioner. So that was his pedigree. So I briefed him in 93. It was a very, very important contempt case against Indian Express. Ramnath Goenka, Saroj Goenka, BG Varghese, they all respondents. And it was my life dream that I said, if I've got an important case, I should brief Keshava Iyengar. Actually, in 84, I took a call, I won't brief anybody. But when this contempt case came and so many people were involved, I said, let me brief Keshav Iyengar. So he was not practicing, but through a friend's father, he agreed to practice for me. Now, two coincidences here. Fali Nariman got the Kinloch Forbes Medal for highest marks in Roman law and jurisprudence. I still remember my first meeting with Keshav Iyengar. I used to see him almost with veneration. So I came and sat next to him and he said, young man, when did you pass out? I said, so and so year. He said, do you know that there was no contempt in Roman law? I said, no, sir, we don't have Roman law in law college anymore. No Roman law? You're unfit to be a lawyer. That was his reaction. And now Roman law, I don't know what's the importance, but I think it's worth considering whether Roman law is good or not. Institute of Justinians are still very good. In terms of property, it's worth going to Roman law. But one lesson I learned from Keshav Iyengar on this thinking and reading, I used to give him a lot of case laws and contempt because it was a life and death matter for Express, Indian Express. He said, don't multiply authorities. He spoke with a Tamilian accent in his own slow way. He said, 60% reading, 40% thinking. Don't keep on reading case laws. Stop the reading and keep on thinking. And he told me a very important thing. He said, 48 hours before your case reaches, tie up the bundle and don't see it again, open it only in court. I've done it sometime, it's been very effective. But second thing of Nariman, which I mentioned, was thinking about the case was as important to him as reading his briefs. The third thing, which I must mention, which you learn as you start practicing, he had a unique system. I think Percy will know when you worked with him. He had a unique system of making list of dates. His unique system of making list of dates with connecting the page numbers. And he told me that when you prepare your SLP, the first para of your synopsis should be so important that the judge feels, yes, there's something to it. The first para is most important, and how to draft the grounds, he gave me some very good tips. But the point was attention to detail and chronologically arranging the list of dates was another unique feature which I have not seen in any other senior, which I worked with so many of them. Then, what I liked about him was he didn't take too many cases. His thing was meticulous preparation, and superb presentation. I would classify him as meticulous preparation and superb presentation. Now, very important, which I liked about him was he was never dogmatic, but also pragmatic. And I'll tell you one example. We did the NJAC together, National Judicial, the 99th Amendment. And the arguing counsel was Fali Nariman, Ram Jethmalani, Anil Diwan, and I was to argue the act. They took up the constitutional aspect and I was allotted, the court said, you please divide the work so nobody repeats. So I was allotted the task of the NJC Act 1999. And those of you who are law students will find that it is difficult to find a more badly drafted act than the NJC Act of 1999. It had 7 fatal flaws. People say NJC should not have been struck down. The act would have never been workable. But to Mr. Nariman's credit, he told the court that I am not for the collegium. Collegium is there, it has got its flaws. But this system is worse. And he said, if you bring in the same recommendations done by the National Review Committee headed by Justice Venkatachalaya, we will withdraw the petition. He made a bold statement that we are not dogmatic. We want a system where the best possible judges are selected. This kind of predominance of the executive with the veto power, etc., will not work. But what was important was he knew ultimately what he wanted and was not dogmatic but pragmatic. Lastly, what I liked was his sense of values. And it has been mentioned that he resigned as the Additional Solicitor General of India. My senior told me that when you're the Advocate General, you're not the Advocate General for the ruling party, you're Advocate General for the state, a distinction very often lost. You're not the mouthpiece for the ruling party, you're the Advocate General for the state. You must see what the state's interests are the most important. And that was reflected by both Mr. Nariman as ASG to resign, because he had come from Bombay. And suppose he had resigned, it was a difficult thing. Some people may not brief him because of fear prevailed in the emergency, there's a fear element. Yet all his family had shifted. Now again to go back to Bombay was a thing, but he took a bold and courageous decision. The other thing which I liked was, similarly, in 2017, they introduced all the tribunals were amended through the money bill. And now it's pending before 9 judges. And we said money bill can't include anything than finance. He took the courage of signing a representation with Aruna Roy and many other like-minded civil society people and said, look, this is a fraud on the constitution. You should not misuse the constitutional power of money bill. So he had the courage to do that. And I also recollect in some of his TV interviews with Shekhar Gupta or with Karan Thapar, he spoke his mind fearlessly, without any hesitation and without bothering about the consequences. And what happens is when a person like Fali Nariman spoke, everybody took notice. And unless these big people speak up, speak truth to power, it is a very, very dangerous place for society. But I admired Mr. Nariman on 3 or 4 TV interviews, his articles, he always stood up for what he believed. And lastly, I'll just mention that what Mr. Nariman did was not just practice in court. He wrote excellent articles in Indian Express. In fact, there is a summary of his articles. He has written 7 or 8 articles in the SEC journal. In particular, I would recommend that you read his article called Silences of the Constitution. That's very well written. And a very good tribute he has paid to K.K. Matthew, whom he called the Cardozo of India. So these articles in SEC, if you just now, thanks to the search, you can just put writer of the article, Fali Nariman, and you'll get the opportunity of reading this article. So these are the few important points that I thought I'll highlight to you. It's worth reflecting upon it and trying to imbibe it. And as they say, success leaves clues. If you do the same thing, you're also likely to get the same result. Ultimately, for all youngsters, it's in your hands. You decide where you want to go, and then you work out the path. As somebody told me, if you want to be an Olympic athlete, then it is 18 hours a day. You want to be in the state level, it is 12 hours a day. You want to play district level, it's 2 hours a day. If you read Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, the 10,000-hour rule is there. But Mr. Nariman, Mr. Palkhiwala, Mr. Sorabji, Ram Jetpalani, all these people I've seen, phenomenal capacity for hard work. And I'm sure that if all of you work today, the bar is such, and I said this on many, many occasions, that today the bar is such, the opportunities are so many, that if you work hard, have a clear strategy, you cannot fail. And I'll conclude by saying that Fali Nariman wrote his book Before Memory Fades. And the importance of Fali Nariman is this, which I have quoted in Courtroom Genius, when we thought of what to write about Palkhiwala. And this is exactly what Mr. Nariman has done as well. To set a lofty example is the richest bequest a man can leave behind him. And Mr. Nariman has amply done it. He has set a very lofty example, and it's perhaps the richest bequest he can give to all of us in the legal profession. And I'll conclude by saying that Nariman's autobiography says, before memory fades. And I think that I'll be speaking for all of you when I say that the legacy of this great man ensures that we will never forget him from our memory. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your wisdom, Mr. Datar. Certainly, your words are very inspiring for me as a student, and I will keep your wisdom in mind. And I think it's the same for all the students over here. And congratulations once again on your award, sir. May this achievement add to many accolades you already hold. The legal landscape is evolving rapidly, and education plays a critical role in shaping the next generation of lawyers. We now want to transition to a fireside chat, briefly discussing this topic. The session, titled Indian Legal Education, Innovative Ideas from 3 Stalwarts, will be moderated by Professor Vishwas Devaiah from BITSLAW School. Along with 2 of our distinguished jury members introduced earlier by Professor Chinmay Deshmukh, Mr. Percival Billimoria, who is here with us today, and Dr. Aparna Chandra, who will be joining us virtually. We're honored to have Justice Roshan Salvi, former judge of the Bombay High Court, on this panel. If I can just give a brief introduction of Justice Roshan Salvi, because this was not done before. Justice Roshan Salvi has served as a judge on the bench for 27 years, including a decade at the Bombay High Court. Beyond the bench, she has been a leading voice in arbitration, mediation, and legal education, conducting training for judges, lawyers, and law students on gender justice, human rights, and judicial reforms. A fellow of the Commonwealth Judicial Education Institute and a Rotary Peace Fellow in Conflict Resolution, she has worked with UN ODC on child rights protocols and lectured at TIS. Her rulings span commercial, family, and human rights law, and her books, Tangible Justice and Women, Her Trials and Triumphs, reflect her deep engagement with law and society. So let's welcome all of these esteemed members of the Fireside Chat for what promises to be a thought-provoking discussion.
Thank you, Salil, for that introduction. And do we have Professor Aparna online? Not yet. Okay. Considering that we have a larger student gathering here, Professor Ashish actually kind of felt that it's important to have a bunch of questions that are related to the profession and legal education. So my first question to the panel is, what is the one most innovative idea that law schools must consider at this point in time in India?
Friends, in our profession, we have come a long way in substantive law, but we have always faltered in procedural law and practice. We may have a very good reputation as very good lawyers, the best of which is here, but we don't have a very good reputation as an institution which delivers quickly, efficiently, and at low cost, like that Greek immigrant that she spoke about, and the three principles that Fali Nariman had given: low cost, high quality, great speed. Now, for that, the one thing which is required is management. Now, law goes very well with finance, economics, even psychiatry, sciences, and also management. And in other disciplines, it has merged very well. But with management, somehow, the lawyers as well as judges have not merged at all. We don't have a very good case management and court management system. If your students can merge these two disciplines, they would come out first class in firm management and in case management in the courts, and also as judges for both lawyers and judges. There are various business principles which can be imported into our study of law. I would say that.
So, what about you?
Yes, so thank you very much for having me here. So case management indeed is extremely important, but talking about this issue from the perspective of the user, because so I've been with law firms, and now, as a senior advocate, I have my chamber. Now, in the law firms, I used to say that, look, any fresh graduate, you cannot expose him to the client for the first 3 years. He has to be trained. And then, the question arose as to what, I really don't know what exactly they are taught in the law schools. So I think a little element of maturity is also required. So I was reminded that now, the younger generation, of course, each generation is more developed, perhaps even more evolved than the earlier ones. And in the 5-year course, in the first year, you have somebody who is with you at the age of 17, which is a very tender age. And I think there is a particular psychology, it takes a particular kind of personality to become a successful lawyer. And I think some of the attributes of a successful lawyer have already been enunciated here. But it also takes somebody with horse blinkers. Yeah, I mean, Mr. Datar spoke about the ability to focus. And I often say that, look, my work goes like a meat factory. So you do one thing, immediately you get on to the other. It's just relentless. And the ability to focus is something that can be developed in law schools. And then also the level of maturity and practical knowledge. So I think, the system of internship is good, but probably still a little inadequate. And I think something needs to be done on that count.
So my second question is fairly interesting, and Ashish wants to kind of kindle the spirits here. So he wants me to ask this question in terms of what is the one pressing challenge the legal profession is facing that a law school can address?
I think I answered this question because I believed in the spirit of management. But I suppose even in law schools, the great principles that we learned today, which we have to imbibe from someone as great as Fali Nariman, the integrity, the hard work, etc., and all of those things that law schools really would be giving. One corner which is left out is the diversity, equity, and inclusion. And in our law field, the inclusion of men and women of merit, not on quota, but of merit. And I've written about, in my book, which you just said, so many examples in different fields of how women have excelled, how they've not been able to excel, and how they're sort of, striving, is true even of our legal profession, which is quite often not thought of. So that also, every single lawyer must know the perspectives, what I call gender perspectives, when they come into the profession, for respect as well as for coming up.
Your thoughts on it?
Yes, so I think it's a point related to case management. Now, anybody who has done international arbitration will know there is another system. We follow the English system of pleadings. In international arbitration, you have a situation where it's something that evolved to save time, but I think it's a very good idea, which is that you file pleadings, evidence, everything together, your entire case. Now, what that does is it forces you as an advocate to understand your case completely upfront. I find that many people, when the case progresses, they are actually discovering something about their own case as it progresses, which means, and see, I come from a school of thought where there is something called case theory. It's again an English concept, but what is your story? If you're defending the case, what is your story? What is your case theory? And do the facts meet that case theory? And unless you know that upfront, you're going to languish because even at the evidence stage, if you don't understand your case theory, you're going to ask questions which are going to come and bite you later. Case manager is extremely important.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, ma'am, for your views. Now, if the panelists agree, and since we have a larger student crowd here, would it be fine if they can ask you a couple of questions? So can we take 3 questions from students here?
Okay. Thank you. So, Vishwas sir had asked the question that, what's the best way to form young legal minds and legal education? And Mr. Billimoria mentioned that internships are a necessary aspect of this, but only one part. So what other kinds of practical skills or experiences should we seek out beyond the classroom while we are in law school to prepare us for a future career?
So I think that, requires some deliberation. Now, see, in chartered accountancy, for example, you have what is known as an articleship period. So while you are studying, it's 3 years practical training. And I remember I was being paid 60 rupees when I first started my articles. So it's a very good practical ground. So when you do, for example, an audit and as an article, you actually see it happening yourself on the ground. You're there, right there. And it instills a little confidence in you also. And it exposes you to the environment that you're being trained for. Now, I'm not necessarily suggesting it because, 5 years is anyway a long period of time in your life to dedicate to a particular profession. And then 3 years of articleship would make it disingenuous, I think. But if some kind of more practical experience can be built in, it will help students a lot. I do believe, I must say, I do believe, I've often said this because, there are, unfortunately, Indian law firms have always been resistant to foreign competition. And I tell everybody that, look, our lawyers can run circles around some of the Harvard types. And I really do believe this. But this practical experience is one thing that can help a lot.
Ma'am, your thoughts on it?
One other thing that can be done for your question is client counseling. It is a thing to be taught. It is a science. It's not only an art. So if you can do that even in your schools, the law schools, etc., and if you can send out your students to hear, to understand the conferences when they go to, like for example, the interns that you were saying, I take my interns per arbitration. I don't take my interns for 1 month, 2 months, 10 months, that way, because they don't do the full thing. But the student would do his or her own work in college and then do the research for one particular matter. So client counseling, and whilst we are doing client counseling, the art of mediation also.
So any further questions from students? Aaron?
So I just had one very simple question. What are your thoughts on the value of interdisciplinary knowledge alongside specialized expertise? And could you share an example of how you've personally found it to be beneficial?
I can tell you the context in which the student is asking the question, because you 5-year law school environment, you go through a range of social science courses, or if you're doing a BBA course, range of management related courses. So the question is actually coming from the point that how does this interdisciplinarity kind of help us as future lawyers?
It would, because as I said, the law really goes well with other disciplines. And therefore, any other discipline that you know about, it's a kind of co-curricular work, which then helps you in the profession. So you are not only a book reader, you've got practical experience. It does help, yes.
So it's important to be well-rounded, of course. And at least as far as chartered accountancy is concerned, I always found it to be an advantage because I realized very quickly that lawyers, the moment they see tax or numbers, their mind shuts down. Lawyers are not trained to, oh my God, it's a number. But and now, when you do complex arbitrations, when you do deal with damages claims, for example, you have to understand the numbers. There'll be affidavits that are given as an expert opinion. Now, you have to see what are the underlying presumptions and then reflect on that, and you can cross the expert on those issues. So, open your minds. Numbers are nothing to be afraid of. And that's something that I learned as a CA.
So, Aaron?
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, ma'am. I am Aaron Chalapuram, second year BBA LLB. Ma'am, my question is to you. When you said business ethics should be imbibed in law and the way law is being done, what aspect of business ethics? Because in law school, talking about businesses and the way businesses work is a very unheard thing. What aspect of business and the way business works do you want to imbibe?
No, what I told you was the business principles which are taught in business schools. For example, paradigm shift, core competence, decentralization, simplification, sharing best practices, continuous knowledge, task versus goal. These are the business principles. They are taught by way of stories. And we find that in our profession, legal as well as judicial, these principles work. Now, for example, something like the big rocks. It is taught in business school like this. May I take some more time? Okay. The professor in a business school goes to his class. He goes with some big stones, small stones, pebbles, gravel, sand, and water. And then he puts all of these in a pitcher. So he puts the big rocks first, then the small stones. He asks his students now, is the pitcher full? And those students are business students, very smart. Yes, sir, of course it's full. So he smiles and he puts in the small stones, pebbles, etc., shakes it up, puts in some sand also. Everything goes in. The students are quietly seeing. Then the professor says, now is the pitcher full? They say, yes, sir, of course, now it's full. So he smiles and he pours some water until it comes to the brim. And then he asks his students, not whether now the pitcher is full or not, he asks his students, what is the moral of the story? So the students who are very smart, they want to say in big words, they say, yes, sir, no matter what, there is time and space to do still more. Very good business principle, he says, but not the moral of this story. The moral of this story, he tells his future corporates, is if you don't put in your big rocks first into the pitcher, you will never be able to put them in at all afterwards. Now, please reflect and see. You put in sand, you put in pebbles, the big rocks then cannot be fitted in even in the intermolecular places. So, this principle, and the professor says, when you get up in the morning, ask yourself, which are my big rocks for today? And put them in your day first. Okay. Now, consider this for lawyers and judges. We've got so many matters, so many courts to attend. We may do one adjournment, we may do one small interim application, some chamber summons. But the client wants the last thing first, the biggest thing first. And we must be able to have that kind of management that has that priorities. This is a business principle which applies very well to us. Then opposite of that is the non-value added items which are taught in business schools. And what are they? That you don't do unnecessary things. You decentralize. You give it to your juniors. You give it to your clerks. Don't spend your time on that. You spend your time on the thing that is most important for a big lawyer. Similarly, for a small lawyer, that you look up to the big lawyer to do that. Now, please ask yourself, as you must have gone as interns to various lawyers, judges, whatever. How many small things are done first during the day? and the big things remain. And the clients are waiting and watching, lovingly and longingly, when will my matter reach?
We have just about time to wrap up the panel. Thank you, Justice Dalvi. Thank you, Mr. Billimoria, for coming together. Thank you.
As we come to the close of today's event, I invite Ms. Chetana, the Head of Industry Interface and Career Advancement at BITSLAW School, to deliver her closing remarks.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to be a part of today's event, and I'd like to take a moment to extend my heartfelt gratitude to everyone who has contributed to its success. First and foremost, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to Honorable Justice Yo-Yo Lalit, former Chief Justice of India, for delivering the presidential address. So, we deeply appreciate your valuable contribution to today's proceedings. My heartfelt thank you to Honorable Justice Roshan Salvi, former Judge of Bombay High Court, for gracing us with your presence and your invaluable contributions to today's discussions. I would also like to extend my thanks to all the jury members, starting with Honorable Justice S.V. Gangapurwala, Dr. Lalit Basin, Mr. Percival Billimoria, Mr. Naveen Raju, and Dr. Aparna Chandra for your valuable time, expertise, and contribution in honoring Mr. Nariman's legacy. Your involvement has truly enriched this event. A special thank you to Surana Surana International Attorneys for your continued partnership and for co-hosting today's event with us. Dr. Vinod Surana and Ms. Rashmi Surana, your support has been key in ensuring the success of today's event. We would like to congratulate and thank Mr. Arvind Datar, Senior Advocate, for your inspiring acceptance speech. So your words were a fitting tribute to the values we aim to honor today. Thank you to Dr. Ashish Bharadwaj, founding Dean of BITSLAW School, for your leadership and unwavering support. A special thank you to Professor Vishwas Devaiah for moderating the Fireside chat. The discussion was really insightful and thought-provoking. I would like to thank Professor Chinmay Deshmukh and Professor Rahela for organizing today's event. Big thank you to our distinguished guests from the legal industry. Your presence is greatly appreciated. A sincere thank you to marketing team, program team, ISCA team, and IT team for organizing this function. Finally, my heartfelt thank you to all the faculty members, staff, students for your enthusiasm and support. And I'm proud to be a part of this vibrant community. Now, please join us for lunch as we continue to have the conversations sparked by today's event. And before that, I would like to request everyone to join us for a group photograph. Thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing you at our future events.